Healing is the most important thing you can do for yourself, for your life. We spend so much time focusing on the enemy outside of us, right? Focusing on the enemies that are surrounding us, that we completely fail to realize that the biggest threat that we face is ourselves, right? And so healing is important because healing puts you in position to no longer be a threat to yourself. Whatever weaknesses you have, whatever pains you have, whatever traumas you have, healing puts them to bed. Healing, does away with it. And so, in order to put yourself in position to be in the best possible, you know, place to survive and to be happy and to have the things that you want, you absolutely positively have to heal. Like, I've been thinking about this, and the truth of the matter is being unhealed causes us more problems than anything else, right? Our own wounds hold us back more than anything else, right? More than anything that's outside of you. What's outside of you can have an impact on you for sure, but what's inside of you, right, is, and what comes out of you, what you release into the world, is far more important and far more impactful and a much bigger threat to you than anything outside of you. And so if you can get that together, if you can deal with all of your wounds and trauma and shortcomings, that's like the first step to get into a better place. It's the first step to having a better life. I was thinking about just like both of the families that I come from and how mother wound and that pain and that trauma, destroys. How it has destroyed and how it continues to destroy in the places that it's not being healed. And, I started my healing journey for that reason. I started therapy for that reason because I could see at that time that, like, the women were carrying wounds from childhood. They had lived a lifetime. My father's mother was in her 80s, and that's arguably a lifetime. And she still hadn't healed from childhood wounds. She was still carrying stuff from, literally the beginning of her life. And same with my mother. And so at that point, I was just like, wow, it dawned on me that it was a choice, that I would have to make the decision to deal with the stuff. I would have to make the decision to want to change. And if I didn't, that I would repeat the cycle, number one, and I would be in the same position. And that scared me more than anything else. The thought of waking up, 40 years, because this is my early 20s, the thought of waking up, 40 years later, 60 years later, with the same issues that I had in my early 20s was one of the scariest things that I had ever faced in my life at that point. It was just like, wow, this is not going to go anywhere if I don't do anything about it. And that began my healing journey. That was enough of a pain point and like just uncomfortability for me to say no. Like, something has to give. Like, I have to deal with this. I can't live the rest of my life with these feelings. I can't live the rest of my life with these thoughts. I don't want to pass this down to my kids. I don't want this to control me. I don't want it to be in the driver's seat of my life. And so, yeah, I was just thinking the other day about how, like, literally both sides, both of the families that I come from, um, are filled with trauma from mother wound. And it's so important for women to heal because women are the nurturers in the family. Women are, you know, arguably, leaders in their own right when it comes to the emotional and the psychological and just, developing the personality of your kids. Like, women do all of that. And so when you have families that are full of wounded women, um, the entire family is affected by it. It's impossible because you're shaping everybody else, and so the entire family is affected by it. And you know, the relationships within the family, the dynamics within the family, how siblings view each other, treat each other, all of that is impacted by the women. And so it is so important for women to heal. It's also important for women to not be abused so that they aren't traumatized in the first place, right? Because that's where that's where the wounding and the pain comes from. And so we got to deal with that as well. But what I'm realizing is, once it happens, it's happened. It's happened. You can't control what was done to you. You can't control how you were treated, but you can control, you know, how you choose to move forward from it. You can control how you choose to live your life. And so, yeah, man, we gotta deal with mother wound. We have to deal with uh, parental wounds, father wounds, those foundational wounds that come from the earliest parts of our lives, define our lives. They set our paths. They determine who we become, where we end up, like all of that. I'm just beginning to look back and see how my mother wound, how that pain that I've carried my entire life has controlled my entire life, has directed my entire life, in ways that I didn't even realize, right? There are certain things that were on the surface that were really clear, but, in the past couple of months, I've really just, like, started to realize how it was controlling me and dominating me and destroying me, really, in ways that I wasn't aware of, in ways that weren't on the surface, right? Certain patterns that I had, certain patterns that I lived in, that prevented me from being successful, that prevented me from being who I wanted to be, being who I was sent here to be. I could trace back and I can look back and see how, the beginning of my life, um, that toxic relationship and that toxic connection and dynamic, it all goes back to that, literally. Here I am decades later, like, still struggling and suffering from things that happened at birth, things that happened, early in my adolescence, 5 years old, 6 years old, 7 years old, and not even realizing that that's the case, not even realizing that, like, the reason why you do this thing, the reason why you operate this way, the reason why, you can't get ahead, the reason why you can't, you know, not to say you can't, because I can, the reason why I prevent myself, really, from doing certain things is that wound, you know? And so healing is so important. It's so important. Like, your success depends on it. Your happiness depends on it. The life that you want to have depends on it. And when you start to talk about, the external enemy and enemies outside of you, the easiest way for somebody to destroy you outside of you is through your weaknesses and your wounds, right? That's your lowest hanging fruit. It's through those vulnerabilities that a person can come in and manipulate. They can come in and control. They can come in and do things that aren't helpful for you, that aren't beneficial to you. And so as you heal, right, as you close those wounds up, as you turn those weaknesses into strengths, it makes it almost impossible, really difficult, but almost literally impossible for somebody else to come in and exploit you, or somebody else to come in and have their way and do whatever they want with you and to you. And so, yeah, so many reasons for healing and getting ourselves together. But I just wanted to drop this in today. It was something I had been thinking about as I just look at my own life and I look at the status of the world right now. You know, my community, people in general. It's just like a bunch of wounded human beings trying to survive their day to day, their lives, and trying to do it without addressing the trauma, without addressing the wounds, without addressing the weaknesses, trying to do it in other ways that'll never ever work. And it's just like, I don't know. I think a lot of people look at healing, because there are moments where I look at it this way too. Like, I look back over my life and I'm like, oh my gosh, what did I do with the last 10 years? Like, what happened? And a lot of people look at healing and they see it as like a waste of time. Like, there's a part of me that, again, like, I question, like, oh my gosh, what was I doing the last 10 years? Like, I don't have this and I don't have that, and I didn't do this and I didn't do that. And the truth of the matter is, I was healing. I've spent, from that moment that I started therapy and chose to heal, I was 10 toes down in that. I was committed to that. And so, and it takes effort. Like, it requires, an investment of yourself emotionally, an investment of yourself mentally, financially. And so I have to remind myself that, like, I wasn't doing nothing. I was absolutely positively doing something. And I was doing one of the most important things that any human being could do, that most human beings don't do. And while I see some of the benefit now, I don't see the much bigger picture. And I think that can prevent people from healing, because it's something that happens gradually over time, and you don't see the big payout until years later. It's kind of like working out and losing weight, where, like, obviously you're losing pound over the course of time, but it's only like a year or two later when you look back, and it's like you see the accumulation of pounds. You see the 50 pounds or the 60 pounds that you've dropped, and then the difference is more obvious, versus over the course of the year or two that it took you to drop the 60 pounds. You don't really see the changes, because there's small changes over time and they're gradual. Healing is the exact same way, where, like, it's a small gradual change in who you are and how you think and how you act over the course of time. And so it takes for you to get to a certain place, a certain point, a certain destination, for it to really click, where it's like, wow, I'm not that person anymore. I am different, I am better, I'm healthier. And for that reason, I think it can put people in positions to not feel as though that it's worth it. Like, it's complicated, it's overwhelming. Most people don't understand it still. There's a lot of judgment still. It hurts. It hurts to process pain. It hurts to own realities about yourself, about your own darkness. It hurts to own realities about the people around you, your relatives, your family, and how they treated you and how they feel about you. It's not easy, but it's so necessary. And in order to have a better world, in order to have a better community, in order to have better lives, it's the only way forward. It's what we absolutely have to do.